Reimagine series, Reskilling for the 21st century. I'm very excited. We've got 2 guests in person, 3 virtual guests, so it's slightly different. Let's introduce our guests. Namya Mahajan, co-founder of Rocket Learning. Hopefully we'll see Namya in just a second. Bhanu, Potta, Chief Growth Officer at Worldreader, also virtual. Let's do our other virtual guest as well. Professor Christopher Tucci, Professor of Digital Strategy and Innovation at Imperial College. Love that 3-screener. Looking really good, the 3 of you. And in person, we have Professor Yogesh Singh, Vice Chancellor, University of Delhi, and Rohan Patel, SVP, Engineering at Builder.ai. Really excited. So what we're going to try and do, lady and gentlemen, is reimagine learning and education in the 21st century. So what we're going to try and do is figure out practical ways in which education can be advanced by intervention at 3 levels: public policy, education technology, Edtech, and India-UK cooperation. So we're going to look at those 3 ways, and between us, we're going to reimagine education. That's our challenge. So best of luck to all of you. Before we start, I just want a simple sentence, maybe 2 if you're feeling greedy, from all of you. What is education to you? What is education to you personally? Namya, why don't you take it away?
Education is empowering. It makes you a person in the world.
Concise, meaningful, brilliant. Bhanu.
I think for me, education is about building the ability to learn new things for the future. And that's what true education is.
Good, nice and short. Christopher?
For me, education is getting skills and knowledge into the general population so that they can be better and more informed citizens.
Good. Let's get our gentleman sitting next to me. Yogesh?
You know, when we talk about education, there are so many things, but someone has rightly said, your degree is just the piece of paper. Your education is seen in your behavior. And then it means what? Learning to live together. That is the purpose of education.
Your education is seen in your behavior. That's fantastic. Rohan, what is education to you?
Well, the way I look at it, education is the foundation. It sets your endpoints, the minimum and the maximum that you can achieve.
Good, good, good. So we've got a taster. We've got our juices flowing already. Let's get to policy. Let's get to public policy. Let's find a way where through public policy, we can advance education at this first level, at public policy. Namya, how do we nurture original thinking? How do we nurture entrepreneurship through public policy?
It's a great question, and maybe this is controversial, but I think in India, at least, public policy is not the problem. We have, excellently written, very thoughtful policy, and the devil is always in the implementation. So we have, 2 years ago, the new education policy came out. It lays out that education is on a continuum. It has to start when the child is 4 years old. We know that children learn most when they're very young, and that must go on, and that every child in India deserves to have foundational literacy and numeracy. There's, a mission around it. But the devil is in sort of making that actually happen. So, public policy is central. Most of the action in education happens in India and the States, right? And it's in the crux of the matter is how do you capacitate states, and how do you empower the people who have, the most stake in the system? So that's the parent and the teacher. So I'll say that sort of public policy has its place, but in many cases that's fixed. What we need is people on the ground making things happen.
How do we then, so let's get to the recommendation, because we've got to be swift here, Namya. How do we get people on the ground doing what you want them to do?
Yeah, so what we say is that the person with the greatest incentive for their child to learn is the parent, right? Is in their direct financial interest, along with everything else that comes with being a parent, right? So the question is, how do you, help a low-income parent to become their child's teacher. And in the early years, that's actually relatively easy, but from a pure ability standpoint. But what we say is that parents need aim. So that's the awareness that they can be their children's teacher and that it's important to start early. It's information that's localized, contextualized, easy for them to use. And M stands for motivation and measurement, right? So are they in a group that also values education the same way? Are they getting an idea of their child's progress? And that's how you're going to actually sustainably get parents to engage and kids to.
Brilliant. We just lost you a little bit at the end, but that was perfect. Bhanu, let's move it on to you. Do you agree with Namya? Is public policy in India not the problem? Is the devil in the recommendation?
I think the public policy as a framework is good, but I think it does not take too much of private sector into consideration, particularly when it comes to education sector. I think the policy needs to do a little bit more work in terms of embracing private players. As we speak, already in urban India, close to 70% of the primary school children are in the affordable private school system. They are not in the public school system, right? So these structures, parallel structures are emerging, and the policy needs to figure out mechanisms to include them. Right now, while the policy outcomes which the policy aspires are good, the mechanics, like Namya was talking about, how do you include both the public sector and the affordable private sector into the picture, is something which I think a lot more work and deliberations can happen.
Recommend then, we need the recommendation, Bhanu. What would you recommend? Getting the public and private working better together?
I think one of the first things is to evaluate both the public schools and private schools' performances through the same lens. That's step one. Step two would be also to figure out how, in places where the public system cannot reach, sometimes the affordable private education systems and the other networks can reach better, kind of figuring out mechanisms to work in tandem with each other as opposed to pitting one against each other.
Tandem. Christopher, public policy, how can we advance it? How can we use it? What's your say on this?
Okay, I'm not as familiar with the Indian context, so I can give you my general opinion about what's happening in the UK, Europe. I think that we've actually made a lot of progress in getting people to start companies. And so I think that, just purely policy oriented towards startup companies has been quite successful. And I think what we're lacking right now is getting the companies to grow and scale. So I think there might be a couple elements to that. One could be some kind of better policy oriented toward scaling up companies, which could be something like European Innovation, Fund or something like that, that helps only once the company gets to a certain size and has a growth potential. And another one might be working, like matching small and medium enterprises with higher education institutions to help them with their problems, specifically, typically technical problems, to get their products so they can scale up.
Good, good, good. Let's get you involved, Yogesh. You've heard a lot. You've been smiling, listening. Do we agree with everything that's been said?
No, they are right in their perspective. But here the issue is larger than this. Because as we know, the economy is advancing, digitizing, and we need different type of skills. That is one aspect of it. But when we say, like particularly in the context of India, we feel that we should have the growth rate of 10% for next 25 years if we want to do very, very good for India. And solution lies in the education and skills. That's why Government of India could sense that and came up with the National Education Policy, where wonderful things have been written, and right now Indian university system is in the process of implementation from this academic session. Yeah. For example, it is a student-centric, multidisciplinary, and choice-based system. It means what? It is not a teacher-centric thing, it is a student-centric. And you should provide a vertical for skills in that. So every semester student should have at least 2-4 credits one has to study, take either skills, entrepreneurship, apprenticeship, or internship, so that skills are integrated in the whole system. That is one aspect. Second is the multiple entry, multiple exit system. So it means what? After 1 year of study, you will get a certificate. After second year of study, you will get a diploma. After that, third year of study, you will get a degree, and then fourth honors degree. Point is, and then there will be academic bank of credit, like your bank account, a specific ID. And if you learn 4 credits from X university, those credits will be accounted. Then if you go for another 4 credits from any other university, those also will also be accounted. So course-based registration, which is a new thing in India, this will happen very soon from this academic session. So students will have total flexibility. If I want to learn few courses from UK university, then I will register there, earn, and those credits will be accounted for in my degree. And 50% should be earned from a university, which will award the degree. This is the only condition. So total things have been revamped in order to have a flexible structure. Although we were, for last 75 years, we were very traditional and conventional in our education system. But now things have changed. And change is for the good. And in the next 5 years, everyone will appreciate this change. Second aspect which you said about the collaboration with the UK universities. Yes, now joint degree is also allowed. Otherwise, it was not allowed earlier. So a University of UK and a University of India can start joint degree program.
And save that thought on India-UK cooperation. We're almost nailing the advancement of education by public policy. Let's finish it off, Rohan. What else do we need to nail it, to tie this bow, public policy, before we move on to EdTech?
Certainly. So, I think we need to look at the problem a bit differently. I don't think it's actually about trying to skill up as many people as possible because, look, the reality is there's a worldwide shortage of engineers. That gap is only increasing, right? There's more people trying to digitize every year than ever before, right? All the way from SMB to enterprise to the entrepreneurs. We focus a lot on trying to teach people how to build software today. And I think that's where the fault lies. We need to focus on teaching them how to actually innovate and how to use tooling to bring their ideas to life. It's a trend we are seeing in the industry today. We do have a mass of no-code, low-code platforms, or platforms like ourselves at Builder, that allow people to bring their idea to life. But where we should see that more is in the education system itself. And I think that can only really come with policy, trying to bring some of the private industry, as the other folks on this panel have said, into the education system.
So let's move on to EdTech, of which we know you know a lot about. What's the recommendation for EdTech? What needs to be done?
So one of the areas where I see a lot of fault in EdTech today, or I see room for improvement, I should say, is there's a huge focus on theoretical knowledge still. And the reality is, and I'm sure I can speak for many people in the industry here today, when we look at hiring, we are looking more at soft skills. Right? That is the key thing, and that can't be taught just through theoretical application of knowledge. That requires that interaction with other folks in group settings. That requires that digital apprenticeship type system. And that's where I think there needs to be a larger focus.
Let's bring in Namya here on EdTech because of given your background, Namya, at Rocket Learning. Give me your EdTech recommendation, Namya. How do we cross this EdTech, using it for the advancement of education? What's your recommendation here?
I think maybe looking at EdTech beyond just, the app and the app that sort of replaces the teacher is going to be a panacea, but as something that is that goes along with perhaps a traditional education system that helps the teacher and the parent, right? So what we do is we've built everything on WhatsApp because that's where our users are. Right, so creating a new app, expecting people to download that, we saw as futile. And the parts of EdTech that we thought were really important and sort of broken were that there can't be one-way flow of information. There has to be two-way, certificates, nudges, what have you. Right, there has to be personalization. There has to be motivation, but that can't be by cutting out the traditional system entirely. And I think that's where, at least for low-income users, a lot of EdTech falters because it, relies on the user's inherent motivation, and that's difficult because life gets in the way, like it gets in all of our way.
But you're nodding a lot. We like nodders. Get in there, say something.
Are you asking me?
Yes, 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 yes. You're nodding a lot.
I am nodding.
I want to get you involved. Get in there.
I find it a really, really interesting topic. I've been thinking a lot about this. We're moving a lot from sort of the MOOC, transmission of information world to something in the future that's going to be much more interactive. I don't know exactly how that's going to look. We're getting better and better on sort of virtual reality, metaverse type things. People asked me recently, someone said, can you develop an executive module that we would offer in Metaverse? And so that's the kind of stuff that I've been thinking about, and as well as sort of take the video game immersion logic and try and apply that to education somehow. I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow, but at some point in the future, I think it could be, quite interesting to get the engagement and bring up this interactivity, which I feel like that's what's lacking right now in, sort of standard just remote learning, which I think is very ineffective overall. And MOOC completion rates, it's very important for understanding where to go, where we're heading, and to get skills for that. But it's also not the best way of engaging with the students. So I think this is what I've been thinking about a lot lately in terms of skills for the future and EdTech evolution.
Idea of education and the metaverse. Let's get Bhanu in on this, who I know thinks about lots of things when it comes to education. Bhanu, what's education in the metaverse going to look like?
I think one of the important things to keep in mind here is Metaverse lends us experiences, like stories in the past have lent us experiences, right? Learning through experience is something which is a superpower which Metaverse brings. But before we talk about the future of Metaverse, I think one of the important things to really understand is the purpose of EdTech or any other digitized form of learning is to go along with formal education system and add on to it, right? And that is a parallel learning approach and method which learners have to learn, right? For us to be able to get millions of learners to be able to get to that stage in the future, the best place to start is actually very early. And if we can skill parents to figure out how they could use some amount of digital learning aids inside the home to help their younger children, the aspect of learning both in school and learning at home through digital or various other mechanisms becomes a natural part of life, a part of a student's life as they grow into the future. And once that ability is there, they could learn through digital, metaverse, whatever mechanism we come up with in future. And that really lends to the way the in-classroom learning and the personal choice-based learning and skilling which happens outside the classroom can go in tandem.
The EdTech bow, advancing education through intervention in EdTech. What do you recommend?
Because with the help of technology, we can reach to masses. So there are advantages of tech. We should use it, and we should imbibe it into the whole system. But one thing which also I want to emphasize, like when we say US, UK, India relationships, earlier, government of India was also reluctant, and foreign universities were not coming for opening of campuses, although they were going for Dubai, Singapore, but not in India, because education is not for profiteering in India. But now they have found a way. There is a gift city in Ahmedabad.
That's right.
Where foreign universities can also start their campuses, and Indian laws will not be applicable, but the law of the origin country will be applicable. This is a thing which has happened in India. It was not easy for the government, but they have done it. And if we are able to find good number of foreign universities that are really very good, establish their campus, their laws will be applicable, they will have total autonomy in the whole system, and then good universities will come. After that, we may replicate that model in other parts of India also. So many, many good things are happening in India.
Yeah.
We have to understand it and implement it. That's my point.
Brilliant. I'm glad you moved on to the UK-India relationship. What can we do then, Rohan, to address the education skilling crisis through collaboration between the two countries?
Certainly. So, personally, I'm a big believer in apprenticeships or digital apprenticeships. I see that as something that teaches skills that are, you just wouldn't be able to get otherwise. And speaking as someone with experience in this, I was lucky enough to intern through high school and through college at various enterprise companies in tech. And really, those few internships were worth more to me than the first year or two of my education, just in terms of what I was able to learn and pick up. What I'd love to see is kind of a reimagining of that the apprenticeship system, right? That we've had in traditional skills for a long time, where we bring that into high school, university, with private companies. And now, of course, as you mentioned, with the technology, we can enable that. We have the ability to do this across borders. And I think that's something I'm hopefully looking forward to seeing over the next few years, is that collaboration between UK private industry and universities in India for these digital apprenticeships.
Christopher, what do you think? I mean, how can the UK collaborate with India or other nations, if you wish to stress, to improve skilling and education, those national collaborations? What do you recommend?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I love the digital apprenticeship, idea. I think it's quite important. In terms of higher ed, I think that, with better technology now, we can actually think a little bit more about collaborative research and collaborative teaching, much more than we could have. I mean, yes, there's an element of, you could have remote campuses for a college or for a university, but I think in addition to that, there could be much tighter collaboration now in terms of joint research projects, which we do see calls for every once in a while, but now we can work together more closely, and joint teaching, which I think hasn't hardly been explored at all, but could be exploited in the future.
Namya, what do you recommend? How can we get closer as nations when it comes to skilling and education?
Yeah, so I think with EdTech, we're becoming sort of more of a global community, I think, of education. So, one of the things that's possible through technology is to, do more testing, do it at scale, share a lot of insights and knowledge. So, part of what we do is look at, behavior change of children, of parents, design what works, what kind of content works. So joint research projects, as Christopher also said, getting together to share knowledge and insights would be fantastic. As a nonprofit, remiss not to say funding is great. And I think there are a lot of UK foundations that are also very generous for India. And I think that's required as we build, the demographic dividend here, which is for India, but also for the world.
No final words. We've nailed it. We've done it. We've got to the end of our prescription for improving education. Final words, UK-India partnerships to advance it. What do we do?
I think I'd just like to add here, for everything what our fellow panelists have just now talked about, UK-India partnership and the synergy which can be created, the bedrock or the foundation for all of that is the superpower of the language of English, right? And if we look at today in India, the aspiration for English is at its peak, and I think it will only increase. And for any of the collaborations and synergies to happen, that common language fabric is required. And I think while we do all the things at higher education, I think at the primary and middle grades, there's a lot of collaboration possibility with the language of English. I don't mean to say this as a replacement to any of the local language. India is a multilingual language. So when you say English, it does not really mean not doing Hindi, not doing Bengali, or not doing Odia at all. It means being multilingual. And India, the interesting part is India already sees English as a skill, not just as a language, but as a skill, right? So there's a huge opportunity for collaboration there, which actually creates the bedrock and foundational interaction capabilities for everything what the other panelists said as collaboration to happen in the higher grades.
Reimagined education, ladies and gentlemen, in 30 minutes. A massive round of applause for Namya, Bhanu, Yogesh, Christopher, and Rohan. Fantastic. Edie's up next. Looking forward to that. Don't you dare move. She'll be with you in a second. Stay with us.